All right, for this bell work, we got two problems. Just wants us to simplify, and remember, when it does say to simplify, it's telling us to distribute if it's necessary, then combine like terms. So this first example, like terms, there we go. The first example, it doesn't have any distribution. How do we know if it has distribution? It'll have parentheses like this one, okay? And do remember that when we have to distribute, that is the operation of multiplication. So 30 minus 10x plus 9, we're looking for any like terms that we can combine. So we do have this 30 and the positive 9, which are like terms that can combine because they're constants. So we'd be looking at 30 plus 9 there. And how do we know it's plus 9? It's because it was a positive or plus 9 right there, okay? So 30 plus 9 is 39. And then this negative 10x, I'm just going to drop as, well, negative 10x. Of course, if you wanted to, you could write this as the negative 10x as the first term, and then the positive 39 as plus 39, okay? This is exactly the same thing. It's just shown in a different way, that's all. You'll notice, though, when I start to combine like terms, I tend to put the first term as the first combined set. Okay, so I always put my like terms first, but it's not necessary that you do that. Also, something else you'll have to remember about these when combining like terms is there were three terms in the beginning, 30, negative 10x, and positive 9. Three terms, but since there were only two different types of terms, x terms and then constants, that's why we end with two separate terms right here, okay? Now, the second problem, it has some distribution, so we'll have to do that first, okay? Now, I'm going to be distributing this 1/3, but it's not even 1/3, it's negative 1/3 because of the minus sign to its left. That means I'm multiplying here negative 1/3 by 12 x's. Now, how many x's is that? I just put that in my calculator, negative 1/3 times 12, and that tells me that it would result in negative 4 x's, okay? But then I've got to distribute the negative 1/3 to the 15 as well. So that's, remember, distribution is multiplication. So it's negative 1/3 times 15, which results in negative 5. And then this other negative 4x in black here, I just drop it because I wasn't looking to distribute with that negative 4x. Now that I have this, I just look for any like terms that I can combine. And I see right off the bat here, I got some x's that I can combine. Starting with the negative 4x in black, and then the negative 4x in red. When I combine these, negative 4 minus 4, I end up with negative 8 x's. And then this negative 5 constant, I just drop as negative 5 right here. Of course, if you switch these around, that would be fine. Negative 5 minus 8x. Same thing. You'll still get full credit for either one of these. But they're just written different, that's all. So again, just for the second example, there was distribution, and then we saw the three different terms, but only two different types of terms. The x terms here that we combined, and then the constants. Remember, you cannot combine x terms and constants because they're not like terms. It'd be like saying you got negative 8, you got like 8 apples and 5 oranges, and that'd be 13 apples, or even 13 oranges. No, they're different, so you have to keep them separated. Here's our objective. I can simplify any expression, whether it has distribution or combining like terms. We should be able to simplify it no matter what it looks like. And remember, sometimes this means also that the order doesn't change. But the first thing we have to do on these always is to distribute and then to combine like terms. So take 15 seconds and copy that down, please. Simplifying expressions is so crucial because if you cannot do this right now, when we start making the expressions even bigger or with more symbols, such as an equal sign, if you don't have this skill down, then all that stuff is gonna be really tough for you, okay? In fact, it probably won't make any sense at all. And so you just be kind of left in the dark, unless you're willing to go back and watch some of these lesson videos and get this stuff down, okay? You have to be able to simplify expressions. And again, remember, simplifying expressions just means combining like terms and distributing. If you can do those, then eventually you'll see very, very large expressions simplified down into maybe 2 terms at a time. But then you'll be prepared to do the other things which we will, that are going to be required in order to solve what will eventually be equations. So as a quick review of what we saw last time, remember variables are letters that are usually represented by numbers, or eventually they will be. But for now they're just kind of unknown values. So we'll usually see some X, but we saw on the last assignment you can see some A's, some Y's, some V's, some W's, something like that. Doesn't matter what letter we use, but they're usually letters, okay? So using and defining variables is a key feature in problem solving. So we saw those variables in our Bell work. Okay, so the variables, like if we looked at the first one there, is just the X is the variable. The term, it's a -10. That's how many X's there are, -10 X's. And then over here, we had the -8 X's. That would be the X is the variable on those two that we did. So you also have terms, like terms, coefficients, and constants. And remember, this is kind of related to what we saw on the Bell work as well. So we take these 2 problems right here, and we can see, like on the first one, remember there were 3 terms, 30, -10x, and +9. Those are separated by addition and subtraction. Terms are separated by addition and subtraction. Same with this one. Now, it kind of started off with 2 terms, but after the distribution, there was actually 3 terms, okay? But again, it's always separated by subtraction or addition. And when it's subtraction that makes that term a negative, if it's positive, then you would see some addition between, okay? Like terms, though, just like we saw on both examples, like the first one, we combined the constants, which are just numbers by themselves. There's no x's or variables with them. So we saw that you would look at those 2 like terms, or over here on this one, after distribution, we saw these 2 x terms, which were like terms. So like terms, they have to have the same variable with the value, or they have to have no variables at all. And those would be considered like terms. If you ever see a set of like terms, no matter if there's 2 or 3 or more, always look to combine those, okay? Which will then be a form of simplifying the expression, okay? Coefficients, they're the numbers being multiplied by the letter or the variable. So like if we go back to this one, we would say that -10 would be the coefficient of the x for both. Or this one, -8 would be the coefficient of the x because it's being multiplied by the letter. It's the number in front of the letter. And then we also talked about constants. Okay, now for right now, like I said, with those variables, in this case we have the x's. Eventually those will be replaced with numbers. And then what this expression is really is a formula that we can use for whatever situation that we're looking at. There's no context to these right now. We may see some that will, though, eventually, okay? But just know that eventually these x's in these 2 problems, they would eventually get replaced with a number, and then we would be able to solve that or evaluate it. All right, so here's our first example, okay? Now, here's a mistake that we see. It's not so common, but we do see it. Some students distribute the 9 here like this. Remember that distribution is multiplication. You cannot distribute right there. Okay, so don't do it. Well, then the question becomes, what are we distributing? Well, it's not just a 1 right here, and there is a phantom 1 right there. You just couldn't see it. But it's actually a -1 that we're distributing into the parentheses, okay? So that's what we're looking to distribute there. And remember, distribution is multiplication. So right off the bat, I would see I got -1 groups of 1x, which would result in -1 x's. And then I'll distribute or multiply -1 with that +6. But when I multiply them, I get -6. And you can do all this stuff in the calculator, all this multiplication. Now the 9 in black, there's nothing to do with it, so I'm just going to drop it. Okay, so it just comes down. All right. Okay, so with the distribution, we're looking at these 3 terms. And there's 2 terms that are like terms. You got the 9 and the -6. So let's go ahead and look to combine those. So for me, that would be 9 minus 6, which is 3. Then our -1x, it just drops. Okay, so this is one way to show it. Remember on Canvas though, if you want to simplify, consider that fully simplified, you have to make that a phantom 1. I would not show that 1x. I like on paper it's okay, some of you did that on the quiz, but on Canvas it looks like it will not accept those. So that's one way to do it. You're welcome to switch the order of those two terms as long as they keep their signs. So you could have written the negative x first and then the positive 3 second. Yeah, this expression right here or formula is the same as this one right here. It's just shown differently, that's all. All right, this one's kind of big, and there's a couple different places we're gonna have to distribute on this one. Why don't you guys take a minute, maybe a couple minutes, and then try this one out, then we'll go over it, okay? So the first thing I see on this one is some distribution right here, okay? Now this is another common error. Not this part, but so this distribution is okay. What we don't want you to see you doing is to distribute the 7 to the 13x. Remember, distribution is multiplication, which, well, we can't see it between the 7 and the parentheses, but there's addition suddenly, which means that you cannot distribute the 7 to the 13x. You cannot do that, okay? Only to whatever the 7 is being multiplied, and that's by these two terms, okay? So that means that I have to take the 7 and multiply it by the 3x's, which would give me 21x's. And then also you got 7 times 5, which is 35. Now that 35 is positive, so we need to show that plus sign right there. Now, that'd be nice if that was all the distribution, but we see this other set of parentheses over here on the right as well. So we do need to distribute into this set of parentheses. Now this is a 2 that's distributing, but it's not a 2. It's negative 2. You gotta be careful on that, okay? Because of the subtraction sign to its left. So that's considered a negative 2 that's distributing. Negative 2 times 4x's, that would result in negative 8x's. And then negative 2 groups of 6 would be negative 12. So again, this is a negative 12 term, but it's just showing as minus 12, that's all. Now we still have that positive 13x's, which we will now drop, just to complete that expression, okay? And it's kind of a big expression. There's 5 different terms that we're looking at right now, but there's only 2 different types of terms. You got x terms, and then you got constants. As long as you understand that, you can know that we're going to just narrow this down into 2 terms, and then it will be completely simplified. I'm going to start with the x's, just because the 21x is the first term on the left. So there's a set of x's, there's a set of x's, and there's a set of x's. How many x's does this result in? Well, you got the 21, which is positive. You got the 13, which is showing to add the 13, right there. And then you got the negative 8, so again, I'm going to show that as minus 8 from the negative minus sign right there, okay? So I just put that in the calculator, 21 plus 13 minus 8, and then it results in positive 26x's. So I was adding and subtracting. Again, if you don't trust yourself to do that, just put it in the calculator, we'll show you. Next up, I do have the constants, 35 and negative 12. So I'm going to take my 35, and I would just show that as minus 12 because of the negative sign right there. And that would result in positive 23. Okay, so that is the answer. Remember, you cannot combine this x term right here and this constant because they're not like terms. So it just stays like this. Of course, you could have kind of reversed that, made that 23 positive, and then positive 26x's. Same exact expression, just written in a different order. And that's okay if you do that, okay? All right, here's another one. So on this one, once again, it's not just a 4 here, it's a negative 4 that we now must distribute into this set of parentheses. Distribution is multiplication, so that's what I'm looking at. It'd be negative 4 groups of 6 n's. How many n's would that be? Well, that'd be negative 24 n's. And then you also got negative 4. I'm going to multiply this. That's by negative 1 because of the minus sign. So times by negative 1. And that results in positive 4. So I show it as plus 4. Of course, we still got the negative 9 n's that will drop in black there. And now we got these 3 terms, which we will now look to combine. And there's only a set of n's here to combine, just like we saw on the bell work. So how many n's will that result in? Well, negative 9, and then I'd say minus 24. That appears to be negative 33 n's. And then, yep, we still got the plus 4 that we're gonna drop there, okay? Because the plus 4 had no other like terms to combine with it. And then, yep, the second way that you could have written this and get full credit for is the positive 4 and then the negative 33 ends. These are the same, they're just written in a different order, that's it. Now, you gotta be careful on problems like this, and we'll show why. But first off, we got this negative 7 here that we need to distribute into the parentheses. Now, I'm gonna show that 1W right there, the phantom 1. So that would be negative 7 groups of 1Ws, which would result in negative 7 Ws. And then also the negative 7 distributed or multiplied by the positive 8. That results in negative 56. Once again, do not distribute the negative 7 to the 9W because distribution is multiplication. This is addition. So everything else there to the right, the plus 9W and the plus V, I'm just going to drop it, okay? So we did the distribution. That's always going to be the first step if we see any. And then we look to combine like terms. Just so you understand, some of the problems on the assignment are not going to start out with any distribution. You may have ended up just starting with something like this. But there is still the expectation that you can do it. So I have 4 different terms, but only 2 like terms here. We got the W's right here, okay? So that'd be negative 7 W's and then positive 9 W's. That results in positive 2 W's. Now I'll drop my negative 56. And yeah, some of you'd say that's a positive 1V. Again, to show that simplified on the assignment, you're gonna have to make that a phantom 1. Okay, and that's it for that one. Now, this one has 3 different terms. Again, you cannot combine these. They're not like terms to combine. So you have to keep these separated. But there's, I don't know, I think there's like 6 different ways to write this. You could have written maybe negative 56, positive 2W, and then your positive V. And then, like I said, there were several other ways to do it, but there's 2 for you, okay? Either one of these will do, but there were more. All right, here's this one. 8x plus 4, parentheses, 5 minus 9x. So yeah, this one now, it's a positive 4 that we're distributing into this parentheses because of the plus sign, okay? So that's positive 4 times positive 5, which is positive 20. It's positive, so I'm going to show the plus sign there because eventually I'll have to drop this 8x. Then we got 4 groups of negative 9x, remember because of the minus sign right there. And that would give me, in x's, negative 36 x's, okay? So now we got 8 x's plus 20 minus 36 x's. And yeah, there's only the x terms that I can combine here. They're like terms that I can combine. So that would be like 8 minus 36 right there, which results in negative 28 x's. Then I can drop my positive 20, okay? And yeah, you could have dropped it over here if you'd like to. If you did, your answer would have looked something like this. Positive 20 and then negative 28x. Same thing, just showing in a different order, that's all. Just understand if you didn't pass the quiz, you didn't know what the crap you were doing. This is pretty much the same exact stuff that was on the quiz, okay? So if you struggle with that quiz, or even if you were gone for the last lesson, this is pretty much it. That's all we were doing. And that's all that was required of you on this mastery quiz today, okay? So as long as if you're understanding this stuff, then you should be able to retake the quiz and then pass it with ease. I mean, as long as you're paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then, well, you'll never understand any of this stuff. And that's fine if that's a choice you want to make. All right, here's another one. So this one tends to cause some, I guess, more confusion than I really wish that it did. And this kind of goes back to the first example that we saw where there is the negative sign out here in the front, but it's a negative 1 that we have to distribute there. Okay, so right here, this would be like negative 1 groups of 8x. So how many x's would that be? Negative 8, because negative 1 times 8 is negative 8. Then we have the other distribution here with the negative 1 into the 5. Okay, now when we say distribute, it's important that you remember that that is multiplication. So negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. And that would be it right there. That's all we really need to do on this one. Of course, you could rearrange it with the negative 5 as the first term and then the negative 8x. That would be fine. Either way that you do this, though, you're going to get full credit on Canvas. This brings us back full circle to the objective. Hopefully now we feel comfortable simplifying any expression, but I'll specify this real quick, okay? So yeah, you have to be able to do this simplification of expression stuff for future stuff, which is why we did a mastery quiz on not only simplifying expressions by combining like terms, but also with distribution on it, okay?